Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder that you can subscribe to the Deep Dive on YouTube, Spotify, and even Amazon. That way you won't miss any of our deep dives.
Yeah,
Okay, so um, you know how right before the election we did a whole thing on Allan Lichtman
right.
and his 13 keys for predicting
Yes,
U.S. presidential elections?
absolutely.
And it was super interesting, right? Especially
Okay.
because, well, he's been calling these elections correctly
Yeah,
for like decades.
yeah.
This time, even Lichtman got it wrong.
It was a real surprise.
It was,
Trump won with 312 electoral votes to Harris's 226.
yeah, definitely not what anyone was expecting, especially given that Lichtman's system doesn't even look at polls or,
Yeah.
all the crazy campaign stuff that's always happening.
Right, right. It's more about the long game, the historical trends, broader factors.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Like, what does it say about American politics right now if even a model like Lichtman's, which is so well established, can
Right.
just totally miss the mark? That's kind of what we're going to try to unpack today.
For sure.
But before we do, I think we have to talk about the very real consequences of this incorrect prediction for Lichtman himself.
Oh, absolutely.
Death threats, attempted break-ins at his house. That's scary stuff.
It really is. And it really shows you how intense people's feelings are about elections,
Right.
especially these days. But it also highlights a core part of Lichtman's model,
Okay.
this assumption that the electorate is, rational and pragmatic.
Yeah, that voters are basically making decisions based on logical evaluations of things like the economy, how well the current party in power is doing, overall stability.
Exactly.
So could it be that this election, the 2024 election, just totally messed with that assumption?
Well, it's possible. I mean, this election was unlike anything we've seen in recent history, right? We had unprecedented levels of misinformation online, this effort to undermine trust in institutions. Frankly, it felt like we were moving away from traditional norms. And that makes you wonder, did that environment make it impossible for voters to be as rational as Lichtman's model assumes?
It's a good question. And then, on top of all that, you have the incumbent president dropping out of the race
Right.
just a few months before the election.
Yeah, talk about a curveball.
Totally unprecedented in Lichtman's historical data.
Completely. And it's not a minor detail either. It's like, imagine you're trying to predict the path of a ball in flight,
Ugh.
and suddenly the rules of gravity change.
Whoa.
That's kind of what happened here.
I see what you mean.
That withdrawal just injected this level of instability and uncertainty that no one could have predicted.
And it seems like even Lichtman himself is thinking his model might need some adjustments.
Right.
He's mentioned re-evaluating, maybe revising the system to deal with the crazy world of modern politics.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
That is the big question, isn't it?
If even a model that's been this accurate for this long can fail, does that mean predicting elections is becoming impossible?
We're going to get into that more as we go through all the things that might have thrown the prediction off.
Oh, great.
It's not about saying these models are useless now. It's more about recognizing their limitations and thinking about how to adapt them to the complexity of contemporary politics.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem. Lichtman's prediction missed the mark, and we have some clues as to why.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean?
Mm.
Let's get into it and really analyze those clues.
Let's do it. Let's start with this idea of a rational electorate.
Okay.
What happens when the information people use to make those rational decisions is compromised by misinformation and manipulation?
That's where it gets really interesting.
This rational electorate idea, it almost feels kind of outdated now.
Wow.
Like, what even is rationality when we're constantly bombarded with information and so much of it is designed to mislead us?
Yeah, it's like trying to do a math problem where someone's changing the numbers on you all the time.
Right.
How are you supposed to get the answer right when the whole foundation is moving?
Right.
It really challenges that core assumption that a lot of these predictive models are built on,
Yeah.
that voters are making decisions based on facts
Yes.
and logic.
Yes.
But what if we don't even agree on what the facts are anymore?
Right.
What if fact has become totally subjective?
Totally.
Like we're all living in different realities.
Yeah. And it's not just about access to information either. It's
Yeah.
about the way that information makes you feel, the stories that connect with certain groups, how social media algorithms spread those stories.
Yeah, it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
You can't just look at what people say in polls anymore.
Right.
You have to understand the psychology,
Yes.
the hopes, the fears, all the stuff that drives those answers.
Exactly. And that's something traditional models might miss.
Hmm.
They're built on historical data, patterns, correlations.
Yeah.
But what if those things don't apply anymore?
Because of all the manipulation, the weaponized information.
Exactly.
So are we saying these models are totally broken?
I wouldn't say broken.
Okay.
I think they're still useful, but we need to be skeptical of them
Yeah.
and recognize their limits.
So we need new approaches to understanding how voters act in the digital age.
Absolutely.
Like what?
Well, a lot of people are excited about AI and machine learning.
Good.
They can analyze tons of data from everywhere.
Mhm.
Social media, news articles, online forums, even things like search trends.
Right.
So instead of relying on old data or polls, AI could potentially see patterns that humans would miss.
Picking up on subtle shifts in public opinion.
Yeah,
Emerging trends.
exactly.
And AI can process information so much faster than humans can,
Way faster.
sifting through all the noise to find the important signals.
Yes, even if those signals are hidden.
That's incredible.
It is.
But is it risky to give such a complicated task to algorithms?
It's a valid concern.
What about bias?
Yeah.
Manipulation?
Yeah, those are big questions. And people are talking about the ethics of AI in all sorts of fields, not just politics.
Right.
We need to make sure these systems are transparent and accountable.
We need to understand how they're working, how they're reaching their conclusions.
Yeah, and make sure there are safeguards in place.
So it's not just about making smarter algorithms.
Right.
It's about making them responsible.
Exactly. And it's not about replacing human judgment entirely.
Right.
It's about combining human intelligence with technology.
That makes sense.
And it's not the only promising approach.
Oh, really?
There's also a lot of interest in the wisdom of the crowds.
What's that?
It's the idea that if you combine predictions from a huge group of people, it can be more accurate than relying on one expert or even a fancy algorithm.
So even if individuals in the crowd have different opinions or not much information,
Right.
the idea is that their biases and errors will cancel each other out.
Yeah, like that old saying, 2 heads are better than one.
Right.
But in this case, it's more like 2 million heads.
Wow.
And there's a lot of evidence that this actually works, especially in complicated areas like politics.
So we're moving away from the idea of one all-knowing expert
Yeah.
and towards this idea of a collective approach.
That's a good way to put it.
We need lots of different perspectives to understand a complex world.
Definitely. And I think the fact that Lichtman's model failed shows us something really important.
What's that?
We need to be humble about all predictions and
Yeah.
all models.
Because even the best systems can be surprised by unexpected events
Exactly.
or just the sheer complexity of the world.
Right. And maybe it's a call to action, too.
Okay.
If information is being manipulated all the time,
Yeah.
we need to be more careful about the information we consume.
We need to think critically
Yes.
so we can navigate this crazy world with more confidence.
That's such an important point.
We can't just let algorithms or pundits do our thinking for us.
Right.
We need to engage with the issues,
Yes.
seek out different viewpoints,
Yes.
and challenge our own assumptions,
we need to be active participants.
not just passive observers.
Exactly. And that's what makes these conversations so important.
Right.
It's not just about predicting elections.
It's about understanding how political discussion and decision-making work in a world that's changing so fast.
Well said. It's interesting to think about how these different approaches to prediction AI and the wisdom of the crowds could actually work together.
Yeah, like a team.
Right? Imagine a system that combines the power of AI with, human judgment and understanding of the context.
Kind of a hybrid model.
Yeah, exactly. AI could do the hard work, like sorting through mountains of data and finding potential signals.
Okay.
But then humans could come in and make sense of those findings,
Yeah.
weigh the different factors, and make the final call.
That makes sense. But what about human expertise then? If AI is doing all the data crunching, do we risk losing that deep knowledge that comes from experience?
I think human expertise becomes even more important.
Really?
Yeah, instead of being replaced, experts would become like curators, guiding the AI's analysis and explaining those complex results.
So it's not humans versus machines.
No.
It's about finding the best way for them to work together.
Exactly, and that's what's so exciting about this.
Yeah.
This kind of collaboration could lead to predictions that are not only more accurate, but also more insightful.
And maybe it could help us move away from that black and white thinking that we see so much in politics.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on who's going to win, we can start to understand why things happen the way they do.
Exactly. It's about going deeper than just the surface level.
I think this has been a really insightful conversation.
Yeah, that's it.
We started with trying to figure out why Lichtman's prediction was wrong,
Right.
and now we're talking about the whole nature of political forecasting in the digital age.
Absolutely.
We talked about the challenges of misinformation,
Yeah.
the limitations of traditional models and new approaches like AI, and the wisdom of the crowds.
It's a lot to think about.
But I think the biggest takeaway is that we need a more critical and human approach to understanding the world.
I agree. We can't just rely on algorithms or experts.
Right.
We all need to be informed citizens.
Engaging with the issues,
Yeah.
challenging our own assumptions.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
It's been a great discussion.
It has. Thanks for sharing your insights with us.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts on all this.
Yeah. What are your takeaways?
What questions do you still have? Share your comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to The Deep Dive on YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for joining us.